Well, good evening once again, and welcome to Global Girl TV. I'm Marvinetta Penn, Executive Director of Global Girls,
I'm Shannon Woods, Managing Director of Global Girls.
and we're so happy to be with you tonight on CANTV. Now, you're watching a live, interactive call-in television program brought to you on CANTV 21. Now, you can also watch us live, streaming live on cantv.com/live. So, if you're watching us and you want to go to a computer in another room, feel free. You can take your computer and you can still watch us. And if you're someplace next week and you want to watch it, please live stream us. Come on, there's no excuse for you not to watch Global Girls on CAN TV. You're watching a live interactive call-in show, so that means that we need you guys out there in TV land to call in. The number is 312-738-1060. So, Shannon, this might be some people's first time watching us on CAN TV, and they might be wondering, what in the world is Global Girls? And for those of you who do know what Global Girls is, this is just a refresher that Shannon's going to give you.
Right. So Global Girls is a youth performing arts organization. We've been around since 2000, and this is our founder, Marvinetta Penn. And we teach performing arts, theater, and dance. And basically what we do is we give voice to our youth's issues and concerns. We work with mostly girls, but we now have a gents program. We also have an After School Matters program, and we do socially conscious, youth-driven theater. So that means they get to put their problems on stage and work it out on the stage instead of on the street. I just stole that.
Work it out.
So yeah.
Yeah. And we work with so many youth now. Oh my goodness. We have an after school program at our studio. We just got our new place a couple of years ago, and it is bursting at the seams because we have youth from 6 to 14 through the week. They come in from 3 until 6, and they learn acting and dance skills, as Shannon says. They do homework time at the beginning of the evening, and they just have a fabulous time. And we have more people coming in every week. In fact, we had a lady who saw us on TV last week, and she came the next day and brought a couple of her kids in and enrolled them. So we encourage you guys to come and see us, enroll your child. In fact, here's our information. We are at the Global Studio, 8151 South Chicago, and you can email us if you like at info@globalgirlsinc.org, or you can look us up online at our website and get more information, www.globalgirlsinc.org. And I meant to redo this this sign, so I wouldn't have to scooch it on up there. And the number is 773-902-2359. So we're going to get on with our show. Tonight's topic is, and I know that we have some events that we're going to be talking about, some upcoming events with Global Girls.
We do.
That we're going to be talking about shortly. But I just want to tell you guys what this show is all about so that you can start formulating your questions and your comments, because what do we say, Shannon? It's not a ball if you don't call. So we stole that too. So we need you to get your questions and your comments together, because tonight we're going to be talking about the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. Actually, that act was signed in July.
July 2nd.
July 2nd. In 1964, so this July 2nd, it will be 50 years. There was an interesting story about Bobby Kennedy, the president, because the Congress had already signed the bill. They had already passed the bill. So there was a conversation between Bobby Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson as to when should he actually sign that bill. And I read that Bobby Kennedy said, well, don't sign it on right before the 4th of July, because all the Negroes will be out in the stores and they'll be demanding that they sit at the restaurant. Like, what in the world? But anyway, that was the order of the day, and that's how people thought. You don't want to rock the boat too much. So I was like, okay, well, Shannon, let's segue into what's happening with Global Girls, because we like to rock the boat.
We do. So actually we have two very big events this week. This Wednesday we have a jazz night. Charles Heath presents jazzing on the South Side. Just moved to our studio.
Yay.
And we have a wonderful singer, Carolyn Fitzhugh. She's going to be there this Wednesday, and that's from 7 to 10. And give us a call if you want more information, 773-902-2359. And
Or
then,
you can call us right here.
or you
Call
can
us
call
here
us
at the
right
studio
now,
and we'll
and-
give you more information.
Yes.
Yes.
And,
And that number is 312-738-1060.
Yes.
Yes.
And then we
Yes,
also
yes.
have our Southside Social, which is our favorite time of the month. Every third Thursday, we have people to the studio. We dance, we play games, we play cards, Scrabble, Bid Wish, you name it, we do it. You know, anything.
Just
we take
about.
requests.
Just about. You
it-
name it, we do it. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's this Thursday. We have a wonderful comedian coming. We just met her, and she just opened for the Godfathers of Comedy last night, Paul
Yeah.
Mooney and Dick Gregory, and she's fabulous. So she's going to be here this Thursday. Her name is Jess Nesh. That's her stage name.
Yes.
But really quick, we're going to take this caller.
And it starts at 7. Both events start at 7. So we have a caller. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air.
Good evening, ladies.
Good evening.
People wonder why we still need the Voting Act of 1965 to be renewed every 25 years. There's a reason behind it, so we have some type of remedy when we have certain types of problems. I'll give you one example alone that's happening right now in the city of Chicago. And it's a fact how nowhere else in the state of Illinois how we elect a chief executive. Like in the city of Chicago, we don't have a primary no more. We have a general election to give certain people an advantage over other group, whatever.
Okay.
And now, since we got that 50+1, and we have that low voter turnout now, it gives a certain person, I can't leave nameless, advantage in terms of being reelected back in the office.
Okay. Okay, very good. Very
Okay.
interesting. Thank you so much for that call. That sounds like our friend who calls in from time to time, and we
Welcome
thank
back.
you so much for kicking that off. And we will be talking about that and the importance of people going to the polls. That was a part of the discussion that we have, and we do have a guest who's going to be joining us a little bit later on, and I'm sure that will be coming out in that conversation. Shannon, did you want to talk just a little bit more about what's coming up with Global Girls before we get on?
Yeah, and then also we do want to remind everybody that we have this after-school program from 3 to 6. So if you have a young lady between the age of 6 and 14, bring her by every day, Monday through Friday. We have our Saturday sessions, and we have a free summer camp. So
Yes.
that's a big deal. We have a free summer camp this summer, so we'll have girls from 9:30 till 3 all summer long. So give us a call if you want more information about that. Call us here, call the studio, check out the website, and
You can always call us. Here's the number. I'm scooching on up. 773-902-2359. That is the number that you can call. And we will definitely, or you can always stop by and visit us. And you can always, if you want more information, you just want to send us some information, you can always go to info@globalgirlsinc.org, or you can look at our website, www.globalgirlsinc.org. And now we are being joined by our board chairperson, Ms. Deborah Hamlet, and Ms. Hamlet is going to be here with us as we talk about the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I want to start this segment off with a little video that I found that you might find interesting. It gives a little bit of history about what led up to the passage of the law, and you can see then President Lyndon Baines Johnson's talking about the Civil Rights Act. So I am going to, Ms. Deborah, you want to just talk a little bit about
Well,
who
of
you
course.
are and everything before we get into this? Yes.
Well, of course, I would first like to thank CANTV for this opportunity, and of course, Marvinette and Shannon for inviting me on. This is a really very, very timely topic, and I can't wait to see our callers' reaction to the video that you're about to play and the discussion that will follow.
And the topic. Our first caller kicked it off very nicely, talking about the importance of voting. And that's kind of where we're starting. That's kind of where we're going to end, because it is so important. Everybody out there, if you don't vote, you don't leave us with a lot of hope. You heard it first on CANTV with me. If you don't vote, you don't leave us with a lot of hope. So without further ado, I really want to go to this overhead, and we're going to start this video.
Congress passes the most sweeping civil rights bill ever to be written into the law. and thus reaffirms the conception of equality for all men that began with Lincoln and the Civil War 100 years ago. The Negro won his freedom then. He wins his dignity now. 5 hours after the House passes the measure, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is signed at the White House by President Johnson. Before an audience of legislators and civil rights leaders who had labored long and hard for passage of the bill, President Johnson calls for all Americans to back what he calls a turning point in history.
We must not approach the observance and enforcement of this law in a vengeful spirit. Its purpose is not to punish. Its purpose is not to divide, but to end divisions, divisions which have lasted all too long. Its purpose is national, not regional. This Civil Rights Act is a challenge to all of us to go to work in our communities and our states, in our homes and in our hearts, to eliminate the last vestiges of injustice in our beloved country. So, tonight I urge every public official, every religious leader, every business and professional man, every working man, every housewife, I urge every American to join in this effort to bring justice and hope to all our people and to bring peace to our land.
There's warm applause from members of both parties as the president sets to work. It is work. He uses nearly 100 pens to affix his signature and date. Souvenirs go to Republican leader Everett Dirksen and Democratic whip Hubert Humphrey. The president seems to have mastered the art of just touching each pen to the paper. Integration leader Martin Luther King receives his pen, a gift he said he would cherish. The Department of Justice will enforce the law if necessary, and G-Man Chief J. Edgar Hoover is present. Another group of pens is reserved for the Kennedys, and the Attorney General is entrusted with a half dozen. Now, in this summer of 1964, the Civil Rights Bill is the law of the land. In the words of the President, it restricts no one's freedom so long as he respects the rights of others.
You know, that was a powerful film for me when I saw it, because it just took me back in time and to the period right before that time started. And you saw Senator Dirksen there in the film. He was in opposition. He's from Illinois, but he was in opposition to the civil rights, to the passage of that bill, and he was a staunch opponent to it. But the president was able to rally him, bring him around, and get him on his side. It took a lot of guts, because President Johnson was from Texas. He was in staunch opposition to civil rights, and he's even said it earlier in his career. Never, ever, ever did he think that blacks should have that Negroes at the time should have the same rights as whites. But he came around. Something changed in his heart. And we think that it was the movement. It was that grassroots movement. It was the people. It was the Birmingham incident. It was the March on Washington that had just happened the year before. And when you have a movement of people, it's hard for other people to turn against it. There are lots of parallels going on today, and I want us to think about those parallels. But before we do, I'd like to bring in Ms. Hamlet and for her to give her perspective on the Civil Rights Act, 1964.
One of the things that really touched me as I was watching that film, and I grew up just as this movement was beginning to get started. I was born a few months after Emmett Till was massacred, and from that point on, it was a major topic in my household and in my community. But one of the things that interests me about Lyndon Johnson's passing of the bill was that he included the fact that the federal government had the right to enforce those laws. Why do you think that was? I'd like some callers to respond. Why do you think that was? I can tell you, and I'm sure that many of you know, it was because there were so many people that were in opposition that we knew we could anticipate the fact that there was going to be some federal government intervention required in order for that law to actually take place in the communities that it should. And I think that that really, really took a lot on his part to actually say that I am willing, I am ready, and I am able to bring in the federal forces if necessary in order to see that this happens.
And one of the things that he said, and let's be straight about what the Civil Rights Act did. It just ended discrimination in public places. A year later, the Voting Rights Act was passed, and a couple of years after that, the housing the housing bill was passed to open up housing to people of color, on everybody in any neighborhood that they wanted to move into. So, but we have to look at what it was from the time slavery ended. As soon as slavery ended, all these laws were put in place to separate the races. That, segregation, Jim Crow, blacks could only drink from this fountain, could only go to this park, could only go to this school, only be here. But this law changed society, changed American life as we knew it. That took a lot of courage. A lot of courage.
It took a lot of years for the change itself to occur. Let's talk about how many years of opposition there was and all of the things that happened as a result. When segregation did exist and it was legal, there was even opposition to us being strong and segregated. There was a lot of opposition to that. I mean, the businesses that we had, the towns and communities that we operated ourselves. Yes. There was opposition to even that strength. So you can imagine the fear that were in the hearts of other community members when they realized that this group is going to come and they're going to be able to open their businesses. Oh my goodness, next door to me? And they're going to be able to come into my business and eat in my restaurant. So there was a lot of opposition. The pen is very, very strong, I admit, and we all owe a lot to Lyndon Baines Johnson for that. But we must remember that it took a group of people, it took a lot of pain, it took a lot of suffering for us to get to the point where the laws were actually recognized, and even in some places not totally accepted today, but the consequences of not accepting them do exist, and that is what makes the difference.
And the consequence, Lyndon Baines Johnson said, as soon as he signed that bill, that he might have given up the South, the vote in the South, for decades to come. And he was so prolific in that because we can still see that the South is still recalcitrant in voting for just about anything that our current president puts forth. Anything that has any kind of progressive movement, they just will not go for. Even this health bill, where people, this will change, this will be another leap for society forward, for everybody to have access to health. To health services, the South still won't go for it.
That is such a long conversation to be had, because here it is, a group of people are opposing something just because, not recognizing the fact that there are so many, all of America benefits. If one child is healthier, if one senior has the health care that they need, all of America benefits. But because this small group over here is going to also benefit, then we have an uprising. We have quite a bit of resistance to it. And that just goes to show that in July of 1964, the signing of that bill was not the end. Today, this has not ended. And I'd really like to see some ideas come forth that can embrace all of these things, including the bill that was signed. Look at what's happened. Look at what's happened with the Voting Rights Act.
Exactly. We have had legislation. We have had the Supreme Court, the third branch of government, just nullify some of the voting rights that people have had. But you know what, people? If you don't get up and vote, if you don't turn off Real Housewives of Atlanta or whatever whatever reality show you're hooked on, it is a scandal that we do not vote. That we would rather sit and watch somebody else make millions and billions of dollars rather than exercise this right that we have to change what's going on in our community. Oh, we can all complain, but when are we going to go to that ballot box and make some serious changes? Come on now, you guys.
Because
I think
Ms.
we have
Penn, the
a
reality. Yes.
Caller.
The
Go
reality
ahead.
is.
We're going to take our caller
yes,
after this. Mhm.
The reality is
Yes.
that not voting becomes your reality. That
Yes.
affects your real life, not the television set.
That's right.
Let's please take the caller.
We have a caller. We're going to get him on the air. Get our caller here.
You guys
Hi,
forget
caller.
about one group of unsung heroes.
Okay.
The minority lawyers. Like one particular lawyer by the name of John Houston that took the 25-year labor of Jet Brown versus the Board of Education. Also to mention, he was also Thurgood Marshall's mentor. Where he wanted to go on, he was one who wanted to be in the Supreme Court justice. Because John Houston, I can't think of this black university, he created this university where there was the training ground for black attorneys. The one that went into court, that gave Martin Luther King the tools to use.
We had so
Okay.
many heroes during
So
that
many
time.
people.
That
So many.
we forget about those.
No, we don't forget about them because we know that every advance that's made is built on the achievements and the struggle of somebody else. We're all standing on somebody else's shoulders, you know. Had it not been for my mother, I would not be here, not just physically, but the courage that she showed me and all those teachers who came along and did something for me, then I would not be here today. All the women who made, and men who made strides and inroads, we stand on their shoulders today. So I'm sure that there are countless people that we could talk about who made a difference for us today.
And are still making a difference.
Still making a difference. Indeed, indeed. We have another caller. Go ahead, caller. You are on the air.
Hi. I wanted to make a comment regarding the Healthcare Act.
Okay.
Yes.
I was watching a comedian who did kind of a man on the street, and he was asking people, did they support Obamacare? And they said, no.
But
And then
the
they said,
Affordable
well,
Care
do you think that everyone should have access to health care? They say, yes. Well, would you support the Affordable Care Act? Yes, but not
I saw that.
Obamacare. No. So I think
Yeah.
it's very important that we educate ourselves and not necessarily and turn off the pundits on TV who's debating the politics of the policies, but really educate ourselves and see, does it actually benefit us?
Definitely.
I saw that.
Thank
and
you,
you are
caller.
so right. I saw that.
Just because the name has been associated with our president, our wonderful president, Obama, people are negative about him, and so they're negative about anything that he stands for, anything that he advocates, they're going to come out against. And that is so small-minded of people. It is in their own self-interest to want this, but because it's associated with this president, and a lot of people would say, well, President Obama needs to be a lot more like President Johnson. It's almost impossible. What do you guys think out there? Do you think that this president could accomplish what he needs to accomplish if he were just more like President Johnson? 312-738-1060. Give us a call and share your comments. What do you think about that, Deborah?
Well, actually, I think it's completely impossible for the first African-American president to emulate any other president
Yeah.
because the opposition that he faces is different. They have actually made changes in the way that Congress operates in order to defeat many things. Have you ever seen as much filibustering going on?
No.
Absolutely not. Have you ever seen a situation where people just cannot say yes, even when it's the right thing to do, even when they had ideas that very much mirrored what he has suggested? They still cannot say yes.
And one thing that I would like us to consider is the power of a movement.
All right.
We
All
had
right.
a movement when we had the civil rights movement, when we had the marches, when we had the leaders, when we had all the people rallying around getting civil rights done. That's what the Tea Party has done.
That's
the
exactly
Tea
what
Party
they've done.
is a strong voting bloc because they say if you do not support our interests, we will vote you out. We will not allow you to get in. Where are we voting? It comes all back to
I was
the
the
vote.
vote. The vote.
The vote.
You know, we often hear that saying that says, each one teach one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd like to add something to that. And I would like for each one to take one.
Okay.
Take one to the polls. Take a 17-year-old. You know they can register to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Take a senior that might not otherwise be able to get there. The power is in the vote. There is no doubt about it. And those leaders that you're talking about, Miss Penn, they're going to have to come from the youth. It's going to have to come from the youth.
Indeed,
So,
indeed.
yes, tell
and
the
speaking
stories.
of the youth, that's one of the reasons I chose to, after I stopped teaching, I chose to come back and work with young people, because I know one day I'm going to go, and I know that those young people coming up behind me, they have such a brilliant future. They're so intelligent. We're working with the school, Gwendolyn Brooks, and next week, no, the week after next, we're going to show you some interviews that we have with young people, young men from Brooks, talking about their present, talking about their future, talking about their goals
Absolutely.
and their desires, and to hear how eloquent these young men are and how passionate they are about their futures is incredible. It is so inspiring. And you know what they tell me? People want to talk about us today, but where were those people to help us become something different? That adults sit back and talk about them, but what are those adults doing to help them make a change? I was like, oh my goodness. They were like, we didn't just wake up one day and become who we are.
Well, you can
People
be proud
helped
that you're
us.
doing something. But
Global Girls is doing something. Global Girls. And there are a lot of people out there doing
That's right.
something. And we applaud you because you are carrying the banner that other people carried for us to be here. So for all of you heroes and sheroes out there making a difference in our community, we say keep it up. But we need to step it up. Global Girls is stepping it up every day in every way. We're trying to make a difference in young people's lives and in the lives of our communities. We just had a Litter-Free Communities campaign on Saturday where we had our young people marching down the street saying litter-free is the way to be. And we cleaned up a lot on the corner. Now just think if every person on the weekend just took a group of people out and just cleaned up the streets, how much better our communities would look. I love living on the South Side. I don't want to live anywhere else. I love my community, but I'm vested in my community. And if everybody were vested in his or her community, what a wonderful world it would be. Go
we're
ahead.
talking about the laws that were passed so that we could live in those homes, Marvinetta.
So we can live wherever we want.
So we can live wherever we want. But we've got to step up and show that we love it, that we care about it. I happen to live within a window's distance from the area that was cleaned up, and I was so thrilled when I looked out there and I said, I just wonder if I can thank Global Girls for that.
Oh, yeah.
I did. I mentioned it to my family. So I just believe that there is something that each of us can do. Tell the story to a young person so that they can feel inspired. Tell these kinds of stories. Tell the good
Indeed.
stories. In addition to that, there are organizations like Global Girls. There's the START program. There's so many. Join one. Find one. Do
Yes,
something.
and thank you so much for tuning in. Remember that on this 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Movement, do your part. We'll see you
Vote.
next week.
Vote.
We'll see you next week with another topic. Thanks much, and have a good evening.
And thank you.